Welcome to the Flowering Daydream podcast, where daydreams become reality. I'm Charlene, I'm your host, and today we are going to be talking about spiritual nourishment and specifically the moon and how the moon can be spiritually nourishing to all of us. I absolutely love October. I am so happy when the leaves start changing colors and falling, and the days get a little bit darker and colder so that I can rest a little bit more and start making soup and enjoying all the fall spices and flavors. I just love it so much. So I thought it would be fitting to talk about the night with you and the lunar energy and just really how we can be spiritually nourished through this season, but also through the year and developing a relationship and a rapport with the energy of the moon. So I really do think about spiritual nourishment as something that we're really deprived in as a community as a whole. There's not everyone, but the majority of the world, I really feel like needs a lot more spiritual nourishment. And to be able to access that is really just being mindful and intentional about your relationship with your environment. The earth has literally everything that you need mentally, physically, spiritually to survive and to feel supported and to feel nourished. But as a community as a whole, we've lost connection with that over time due to a number of things. But having electricity, having grocery stores, having the internet, all of those things really kind of put us out of touch with really needing to be engaged with our environment. It's not a necessity anymore. It's not something that you have to do. And so it has to be something that you intentionally and consciously want to do because all those barriers are in place, even though they might provide us with things we like or enjoy. There's still a barrier to connecting to our environment. We're not supposed to be wearing shoes with rubber in them. We're supposed to be receiving the biorhythms of the earth through our body, which actually has so many healing benefits to boosting our immunity, to clearing our energy, to giving us energy. So, really paying attention to how we connect to our environment and how mindful we are of that relationship is so healing. And we weren't meant to go through this earth alone. We're just not meant to be doing this by ourselves, and even only with our human companions. We were really meant to be engaging in our environment in a nourishing way as an added layer and a primary foundation to our functioning here. So, how do we work with the moon in a spiritually nourishing way? I think that the first step is to pay attention and begin to connect to how your mind, body, and spirit feels during the different phases of the moon. That's the first step. And recognizing what the moon is doing to the planet on a physical level, it's moving our tides, our waters. There's a magnetism, a push, and a pull. And if our bodies are made up of 70% water, it's pulling and pushing on our fluids in our body. And so, just that alone on a physical level is affecting you, whether you're connecting to it or not. And when you start paying attention to just that, you start really connecting to the energy of the moon. In addition to that, if the moon is governing water, and if water is fluidity and flow and emotion, and if we're recognizing that that's connecting to that, then we're also going to notice, particularly around the full moon, when things are emotionally coming to a head or amplifying, because that push and pull from the moon is going to be increased during that time. So you're going to feel a pressure in your body, and that's going to move around anything that you have suppressed or anything that's stagnant or anything that's needing released. And so just paying attention to how you feel around a full moon is probably the easiest moon cycle to start really connecting to that energy, because you're going to feel that one the most. But then when we're around the new moon, it's quiet, it's calm, it's introspective. It's a time where things feel a little bit more mellow. And so just noticing those phases and then the waxing and the waning, the leading up or the leaning back, that push pull is just paying attention to that is a really good place to start. And I used to love to get, before there was all these apps, I would get these monthly lunar cycle cards in the mail. And I think they were like a 5 by 7, but it would just have the lunar cycle for the month on there. And I would have that up on like my mirror or whatever. And it was just helpful to pay attention to that and notice where I might be able to actually pair up with the moon in helping me release energy and helping me um, draw in energy. Being in tandem with the push pull of the moon can really amplify. It's like a therapist. It's like a helping ally. It's like, hey, I'm going to push these emotions out that you're suppressing or holding in, or maybe they're just stagnant and they've already been processed and you need to release them. And then I'm going to draw in energy to you. So it's like this helpful ally that's just always there no matter what. It's very consistent. It always shows up. And when you begin to build a relationship and a rapport with the energy of the moon, that's where things become even more impactful and more healing. So when you think about the moon in general, it's a receptive energy. It's an energy of the night. So it's the energy of what's hidden in our psyche, our subconscious. It's the shadowy energy. It's also feminine. There's a divine feminine energy aspect to the intuition, to the fluidity and the flow of the water and that flexibility. And I'm not talking about gender, I'm talking about energy, and everybody has that feminine, masculine energy within them and can be accessed and amplified through working with the moon. And so, if you're needing help with receiving, integrating, processing emotions, feeling emotions, all of that, the lunar energy can be really, really helpful. It's also just a fun thing to realize the multiple layers that you can receive beyond that when you're working with the moon. You can be working with moon water, you can be working with crystals, you can be manifesting and setting intentions, you can be doing release rituals. You can really pair up and amplify whatever healing or wisdom or insights or intentions that you might have. And so in ritual, it becomes this really helpful ally. And it's supposed to be a back and forth relationship. Everything in spirituality is supposed to be back and forth. It's not supposed to be one sided where you just ask for things or use things to get what you desire. It's supposed to be, it's meant to be in relationship with you. And that's going to be personal to you. Whatever beliefs, culture, tradition, background experiences that you have are going to shift how you might work in ritual or ceremony or with your magic or whatever around the lunar cycles. And that's a personal thing, that's a customized thing. And I think of spirituality as also a creative process of what resonates with you, what calls to you, and also what you enjoy. It's a part of all of that. So I don't think of rigidity or rules when it comes to any of this. And so it's also about what you feel. So you're tapping into what you feel like doing around what cycle of the moon. It's not a mandatory thing that you have to do. So let's talk about the new moon first, because that's my favorite. So I love the new moon so much because it's quiet and calm, but I'm also a big fan of new beginnings and starting fresh and intention setting. I love spring. That's my top two favorite seasons are spring and fall. But I just love that idea of starting fresh and being able to draw in new energy. And I think of that when I think of the new moon. So when the moon is completely dark and we're in that phase, it's the perfect time to set intentions, to declare them to the universe. It's a great time to do manifesting, although I could have a whole episode on how I don't believe just like saying what you want is manifesting. There has to be actions, there has to be realistic expectations, and there also has to be like a plan around the manifesting. It's not just, oh, I want this or whatever. I think there's the highest good involved in that. I think the universe aligns with that, and that might not always be what we thought it was going to be. So we can have a whole episode on that. But I still think it's great to work with the new moon to set those intentions. And I also think about the new moon the same way I think about going to sleep every night. I feel like every morning when you wake up, it's a new moon. And I don't know if anybody else thinks this. I'm sure there's people out there that do, but when I fall asleep at night, I feel like I'm surrendering to death. I'm like saying, I'm going to let go and surrender my consciousness, which feels like dying every night. And not in a bad way, just in a surrender type of a way. And sometimes I struggle with that a little bit. But then I feel so good the next morning because you really can start over. It's a fresh start every day when the sun rises. And that's what I feel like the new moon is. So there's a million rituals that you can work with the new moon. I will talk about a couple that I really enjoy. And one of those is affirmations and intention setting. And when I talk about affirmations, I'm talking about amplifying your intention setting with your affirmations. And so when we work with affirmations, we work with positive present tense statements, but really the key to it is feeling the feeling as though it's already existing. And if you're setting an affirmation or an intention that you haven't experienced in life yet, so you don't know the feeling, you have to like get into character. You have to try to pretend to imagine what that feeling would feel like. And so when you're writing that affirmation or that intention, you're drawing what you think that energy would feel like into your body and you're becoming it while you're doing the intention setting or the affirmation writing. And I really like to use a white candle and scribe that affirmation and intention onto the candle, and then I will burn it on the eve of a new moon. You can also just go outside and connect with your environment and connect with the moon and verbally set your intentions. You don't have to have a candle. You don't have to have any tools to do any of these rituals. So you can absolutely do that, and it's just as powerful. The other thing I love to do is to draw tarot or oracle cards on a new moon and just kind of ask some questions around, what do I need to draw into my life more? What is hidden that needs my attention? What is this new moon energy bringing that I can collaborate with? You know, you can ask these very specific questions on a new moon cycle, and it's more amplified, more accurate, more efficient on the eve of that new moon. Now, you can draw those cards at any time in the lunar cycle and get answers. But when you're doing rituals and pairing up with the energy that's already pre-existing in your environment, it's amplifying whatever it is that you're doing. So I like to pull cards. I like to work with the white candles, intentions, and affirmations on the new moon. That is my favorite way to work with that energy. Now let's talk about a full moon. On a full moon, things are coming to a head, they're amplified, they're charged. There's release that can happen. So there's a couple of things that you can do depending on how you're feeling. So if you're feeling like you need to release a behavior, a pattern, an energy, a person, a place, a thing, it's a great time to do that. But also if you feel like you need extra energy, like a push or an amplification for something, you can also work with rituals for that around the full moon. So my two top favorite release rituals for a full moon are working with fire and water. So now you're bringing in two more spiritual nourishing allies in conjunction with the full moon energy to amplify whatever ritual you're doing. So, whatever it is that you're wanting to release, you can write it down on some disappearing paper, my favorite magical paper. And then you can dissolve it in some water on a full moon. Or if you're feeling like you want to work more with the fire energy, you can write it down on a piece of paper and then burn it in a bonfire or a safe burn bowl and do your own release ritual that way. When I want to amplify something, I will work with the full moon and usually with clear quartz crystal. So I will program my intention of what it is I'm needing extra energy for or what I want to amplify. And I will ask the clear quartz crystal and the moon to program that into the crystal and harness that energy. And then I can work with that crystal in more ritual, or I can just have that crystal on my altar, or I can just bring that crystal into my home and it will constantly emit that amplification. So those are the ways that I like to work with the full moon. Now, when you're thinking about the waxing or the waning phases, it's the push-pull, right? It's the leading up to the full moon and the drawing back to the new moon. And so those phases can be worked with as well, although I favor the new moon and the full moon the majority of the time that I'm working with ritual. But those phases can be worked with as well. They can be worked with like what you collect during those phases, like the rainwater that you might collect to make your energy sprays or to clean your house or to work with it in any way that you choose. You can also work with that energy, that momentum that's building up in the waxing phase. If you're needing extra energy, if you're feeling like I need more momentum in life, then you can work with that phase to help support you in charging that energy for you. Sometimes if you just go out during a full moon to do that, it can be too much energy at once and it's not sort of titrated or calibrated. And that's where the waxing phase, I think, comes in handy. And then with the waning, it's like, okay, I can work with that phase to let go, to release, to relax, to turn inward, to reflect, to observe, to close something out. You can work with that phase of the moon in your ritual as well. One of my favorite things to do is to collect or is to make moon water. Well, I like to collect water during the phases too, but I like to make moon water. And when you're making moon water, there has to be some kind of an intention. Like, what are you wanting the moon water for? You can do it with the sun too. You can make sun water too, but that's a different energy. But I love working with the moon to make my sprays. I make energy sprays. I make a sleep spray, a clearing spray, and a joy spray. And I will take distilled water, put it in a glass jar, and put it out overnight when there's a full moon. And that's the water that I will use to make an energy clearing spray because it's got that full charge and that release and that clearing and that amplification. If I'm making the sleep spray, then I'll use the new moon or the waning moon cycle to make the water for that spray so that it's calm and quiet and there's not that, super pressurized charge to it. And then with the blossoming joy spray, I will just kind of feel around to when I want to put that water out. Usually it will be in the waxing. So like in that phase, it will be sort of building up energy and raising that vibration. And that's how I think of that water when I'm working with my sprays. So there can be a lot of different reasons as to why you might want that moon water. You can water your plants, you can bathe your crystals in it, you can add it to ritual baths, you can drink it, you can make your potions with it. There's so many things that you can do with moon water. And if you're going to drink it, just make sure that you use filtered water or spring water. And then if you're going to work with it in your sprays or things like that, you're going to want to work with distilled water. And then you do want a clear jar so that there's nothing, affecting it. And then technically you want to bring it in before the sun comes up. Otherwise, now you've got moon water and sun water. I've been known to like leave it out. And then I've got two waters going on. Anyway, bring it in before the sun comes up and you've got yourself some moon water. The other thing that I really like to work with in just like acknowledging the moon is astrology. And when you think about planetary alignments and sort of where things were at the time that you were born, you can look at your moon sign, not your sun sign, but where your moon is at in your chart, not your moon sign, where your moon is at in your chart. And that represents our subconscious deepest self. And it governs our emotion and our intuition, but it really tells you how you might process and project emotionally to the world. And so I think of astrology as just this like beautiful blueprint of discovering who you are and just kind of having this outline of your soul. And you can look at that through the tarot archetypes with your birth card. You can look at that through human design. There's all these methods of viewing your energetic blueprint, but I feel like the more that you learn about yourself, the more empowered you will feel and the more that you can connect spiritually. So I haven't tried this yet, but I think you can do this where you can put in your birth time and your birth location and just ask ChatGPT what your where your moon was at in your astrology so that you know. And of course, there's apps where you can just like get a free chart download and discover that as well. But it's just another way to get to know yourself. So I like that. I also love to work with crystals with the lunar cycles. And like I said before, I don't mandatorily do anything on a lunar cycle. It's more about how I feel and what kind of nourishment I'm needing at that time. So sometimes I'll put crystals out under the full moon to charge and amplify. Sometimes I will put them out into a new moon if I'm doing some intention setting. So it's really just about how you want to work with those crystals when you're not having them outside in the lunar cycle. So what are you going to do with them would determine, what phase you might work with them outside. So let's do a collective reading, a moon reading. There's a couple oracle decks that I really love to work with for the lunar cycles. One of them is Moonology. It's a great deck. But today we are going to work with the Sacred Reflections Oracle deck, of course. And we are going to do a 3-card reading with the deck. So you're going to shuffle your cards, Oracle or Tarot. What you want, if you have an Oracle deck, is you want a range and diversity of shadow cards and emotions and things like that so that you can actually get an in-depth reading. Otherwise, if you have an Oracle deck that's all positive messaging or doesn't really have the other aspects of being human in it, then you're not going to get a fully diverse reading. So 3 cards. We're going to do what to release, what to focus on, and what to invite. So the first card, what to release, is the waning phase, right? The second card is what to focus on, the full moon. And then the third card is what to invite, which is the new moon. All right. So this is very interesting. Our first card, which is what to release, this is the waning phase, is a gratitude. Got the gratitude card. Enter the realm of boundless possibility. So when we get a card like this for what it is that we need to release, I think about what is the opposite of gratitude. right? And how, and you see in this imagery, like the sun is setting, it's going down, right? So it's really about thinking about letting go of limitations because gratitude is boundless possibility. So, what are my limits? Where am I restricting myself? How can I pay attention to where I'm limiting myself? And how can I release that? And pairing up with the full moon would be a great ritual to be able to do that. So if you're doing a reading for yourself and you've got this message, it's like, okay, around the full moon, I'm going to create my own little ritual and I'm going to invite the moon to help me release my limitations so that I can be in that gratitude energy. That gratitude energy is expansive energy. And that's a difficult place to be in when you're going through something difficult. You know, it's hard to put yourself in that position. And so it's not about ignoring those things or not validating and connecting to what's really going on in your life. It's more about an energetic shift of expansion so that you can move around in that space within yourself so that you don't feel so heavy and so pressurized and so inundated and not having space within yourself to be able to restore and feel nourished so that you can tackle, whatever it is that you're going through. So that is the first card. The second card that we have is what to focus on. This is the full moon. And we have the magic card. Every moment holds magic. I love that. It's so fitting for our episode today. So, again, we have another card about our internal energetic atmosphere and how we view the world and how we can be spiritually nourished in every single moment if we are connecting to our environment. And by environment, I don't mean people or whatever's happening with people. I mean the earth. I mean the air, the water, the the ground, that type of nourishment. Like how can we do that? Like just watching the leaves change when I'm like distracted while driving because I am just in complete awe of what's happening. Like that, right? And I don't have that, that's not all the time, but that's a really good example or reminder of like, okay, wow, I can receive nourishment just by observing the vibrant colors that the earth goes through when she goes through her transformation of this season. And so it's about taking those moments and expanding them inside, which creates space and nourishment to be able to handle the rest of life. So that's what it's about. It's not about bypassing, it's about creating space. And then the last card that we have is what to invite. This is the new moon. Oh my gosh. I know this is a collective reading, but I can't stop pulling this card and I really don't want any more of this energy. But guess what? We're all going to get more. This is a collective reading, so it's not just happening to me, it's going to happen to all of you. And it's supposed to be, anytime we go through rebirth, this is the rebirth card. An important shift is happening. Anytime we go through rebirth, it's like things have to get broken down and tore down, like the phoenix rising, to be rebuilt. And sometimes it's not always, a super challenging thing, but in the end, it's always growth. It's always opportunity for growth and evolution and all of that. And I feel like this has just been nonstop in the world for a while now, but also my entire life. So I would personally like a little bit of a break from that, but I don't think we're going to get that. This card just keeps coming up. So that is what to invite. It's about not resisting. I'm sitting here going, oh, I want to resist that, but it's about not resisting. It's about accepting change, accepting the breaking down of systems, patterns, behaviors, and going through what feels scary or unsafe in a way to be able to get to this new way of being, this growth and this change and this opportunity. So that is the collective message. So that's a fun lunar cycle reading that you can do at any time. And it's just 3 cards. But you can also get really specific with your lunar cycles and pull a card for each cycle or each phase and connect to actually, specifically that energy with your questions. So that is all I have for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the spiritual nourishment in today's episode, and I hope that you get the opportunity to connect with the moon. If anything, just go outside at night and stare at that beautiful glowing energy, especially when it's a full moon, and just allow yourself to be nourished by that light. Allow that light to come inside of you and really bring forward whatever it is that you need help with illuminating, and whatever it is that you need guidance with, and whatever it is that you need to be helped with. Allow that to be that ally and that support. This is the Flowering Daydream podcast. I'm Charlene. I'm your host, and I will see you next time.